I am back with Federico Viticci, the editor-in-chief of MacStories.net, to kick off our summer Apple OS preview series. How you doing, Federico?
That's right. That's me, Federico, the editor-in-chief.
I like to stroke your ego every other episode just so that you feel good.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that. It's official. We're starting the summer series. We're doing this again. We are going to be taking a look at what's coming in the Apple OS ecosystem now and through the end of the year, at least until September, I guess. And today we have a very fun and special episode. We're doing these extra episodes, John. I mean, we did daily AppStories episodes last week. Now it's a Tuesday, and there's another one. Like, what are we doing here?
I have, I think, recorded 6 out of 7 days with you over the past week. and we're going to record AppStories this week for the following week a little early.
Doing it again and again and again.
Wall to wall, Federico and John. Yeah. No, we're starting the summer series. And if everybody remembers, that's a combination of a bunch of stories on the site, as well as some interview episodes of AppStories. And this is the first interview episode. We have guests from 4 of the AD Award-winning apps and games, and we're really excited about this. We did something similar last summer right after WWDC, and I'll let everybody in on the fact that actually we've already recorded these all, and we're recording the intros separately, and these are really fun, interesting interviews. So I guess buckle up, because we've got 4 short interviews with 4 of the 12 winners. Also, as we get started, Federico, I should mention that we have a sponsor for this entire summer series, and that is Concepts, the Infinite Canvas app for the iPad. All right, let's get started. We're here today with Winston Chen, the maker of Voice Dream Reader and the winner of the Apple Design Award for Inclusivity. Welcome to the show, Winston.
Thanks so much for inviting me.
It's great to talk to you, and congratulations on the ADA. It's such a huge achievement, and it's great to see indie developers who solo developers working on apps for years and winning an ADA. It's a big thing, and I'm really happy for you.
Oh man, it's unreal. I've watched winners of WWDC for many years and just really admired all the work everybody has done. And I never imagined my product, my app would win. So I'm just thrilled and honored and very happy.
So Winston, congrats again. Can you tell us a little more about that? Like, how did you get started as an indie developer? Sort of, what's your story as a developer on Apple platforms?
Yeah, the story actually started about 10 years ago, almost exactly 10 years ago. My family and I decided to take a year off. We lived in Boston, and we wanted to just take a sabbatical, if you will. And we moved to a small island in Norway, just north of the Arctic Circle. And we were going to live there for a year and, reset, have some adventure, have some fun. It's a really beautiful place. We got there in the summer, and it was I did a lot of hiking and fishing. It's a tiny island with a year-round population of less than 200 people. When the winter came, you getting fewer hours of daylight, and I ended up having to spend a lot of time indoors. So I wanted to keep myself busy, so I decided to write an app. Back in those days, 10 years ago, if you recall, iPhones were, they were just getting big. They just started to take off. And I was interested in that technology and just wanted to know more about it. So the idea that, I was going to say, I was going to write an app, and it could be anything. But I was definitely interested in speech and audio. So the idea for the app is auditory reading. I always thought that reading is just this weird activity for the human brain. We scan the little black letters on a white piece of paper, and then it was white screen. And because most languages, you really are, they encode phonetics, they encode speech. So text is really just a string of phonetic symbols, and we have to decode them. And it's really hard work for the brain. Most kids, it takes years to be proficient at it. And so some people never get to be proficient at it. So we know our brains are sort of wired to communicate orally. And the fact that, literacy is demanded of everybody is a very recent thing. It started with the printing press and sort of grew from there. So now, we have these really powerful computers in our pockets. So why not, have these powerful computers do the decoding for us? So we read in a more natural way, which is by listening. So that was the idea. And I never written an app before. I knew I was a programmer a long time ago, but I wanted to learn, so I decided to do the whole thing myself. And so I built a very simple app, and that's how this whole thing got started.
Wow, that's amazing. Could you tell us a little bit about Voice Dream Reader and what it does and how people can use it?
So I would say that, the main thing is that it makes reading takes it from a visual activity, and it makes speech the center.
Mm-hmm.
So, a speech centric, if you will. It still presents the text that you want to read visually, but the space and everything is driven by speech. And in the middle of it is a text to speech engine. And you think about the text to speech engine, I would think about that almost like a performer. You have sheet music, and the text to speech engine renders the content of the sheet music into sound. But you have a lot of dials and controls, and you can tell the performer how to do it, how fast, how slow, higher pitch, lower pitch, whether to ignore certain parts of punctuation or references. So you have a lot of control over how that text is rendered into speech.
That's really interesting. One of the things that I've noticed in trying out the app is that it relies on a lot of really interesting, intuitive, simple gestures. Could you explain a little bit what the gestures are in the app?
Right. So the one finger gesture is still there, like scrolling up and down, tapping. But a lot of speech-related gestures are done with two fingers, two touches.
Mm-hmm.
So when you swipe, up and down, you're changing the speech rate. Or you swipe left and right. And you can double tap when tapping once with two fingers brings the visuals and the audios together, so it synchronizes them. So it allows things like, you're listening and you're looking at the word is highlighted as it's reading. But then you can sort of scroll ahead and see, what's in the next chapter. So now your audio and visuals are being separated. The streams are no longer synchronized. But you can just tap the screen with two fingers. That brings the synchronization back together. So that's one of the central premises of the app, is that you have these two modes of presenting content, presenting text, which is audio and visual, and both are possible, but they can be synchronized.
So, Winston, one of the things that I often like to ask indie developers, especially, and solo developers like you, is what kind of design challenges did you have to figure out on your own while creating the app? So Voice Dream Reader is available on the iPhone, iPad, and Apple Watch, right? 3 very different devices, but the same application. And you, as a solo developer, sort of, what are some of the challenges that spring to mind in terms of making sure that you have a consistent experience that's on 3 different Apple platforms?
Yeah. As a solo developer, one thing I'm very acutely aware of is that I have limited time. So I don't have a lot of room to make big mistakes, like, going down a rabbit hole, building a feature that may not be widely used. So in general, I take a very incrementalist approach to everything. For example, migrating to Swift, I've been gradually doing that, but I only do it when I need to make some big changes to a section of the code base. And as far as supporting multiple platforms, I'm actually working on a Mac version now, and that's a gradual process too. I needed to do a better job separating the logic and the data from the presentation. Going from supporting a tiny screen like an Apple Watch to a large screen on a Mac. Requires different way to think about the UI, but the underlying engine, and thankfully it's speech, it cuts across all the platforms. So generally I take the approach of, making changes, paying my technical debt, in a way that's efficient. I only do that when I'm, or re-architecting something. I only do that when there's something else I need to do in the same section of the code.
Right. And now we're recording this during the week of WWDC, so I assume that you've been checking out some of the new APIs, some of the new frameworks. Is there anything that stands out already to you as potentially something that you could, take advantage of in the future?
Well, the thing that I was the most excited about was test flight on the Mac.
Right, obviously.
Me too.
I'm working on a Mac app. I'm thinking, how am I gonna get this out to beta testers? And then of all the APIs introduced, I think I was the most excited about the concurrency in Swift. And I did a little bit of coding in JavaScript and just realizing how nice it is to have this, the async and await commands, and wishing I had that in Swift. And here we are. I think it's the way it's done is even better. So really excited about that. And now speaking of technical debt, oh my God, going through the code base, and it's a huge code base, trying to change over to the new syntax.
Yeah, I can imagine. Winston, you won the ADA for inclusivity, and I was wondering, what has the impact of the app been on the accessibility community?
Yeah, and this is a journey that I thoroughly enjoyed, and also brings a lot of sort of joy and satisfaction to my work, which is when I started with this simple idea of text to speech, right, rendering text into audio. I didn't know much about accessibility, and it was the user community that brought me every step of the way. At first I heard from a teacher who had a student with dyslexia, and so he told me that I loaded your app on my iPad, and I loaded an math exam on the iPad, and I gave my iPad to the student. Now the student can take an exam without someone having to read out the questions for him. And that was when I realized, wow, there's this amazing use case that I didn't know about. And then the blind community also got behind this app and really, walked me through how to specifically design the app for the blind. And from there on, it sort of evolved into other use cases, like blind people wanting to read, in addition to text to speech, to read using their refreshable Braille displays. Low vision users who require large text and super legible fonts and high contrast. Right? So you look at the UI is designed in a way where everything is as contrasty as possible, with white buttons on dark backgrounds. And people with ADHD, they want a reading environment that has very little distraction, and also something that helps their eyes track. So I have a reading mode for people with ADHD. And moving out and speed reading, and I discovered that a lot of people want to read really fast. So over the years, I put in specific modes for people who want to speed read. To speed read. Recently, I just put in something called RSVP. I think it was also known as spritz, which is flashing individual words on the screen very fast. But here, that's combined with audio with speech, which I'm hoping would really improve retention. So here we have all this pretty large variety of people who with different needs and interests, and I'm just really happy that I can keep on building this and adding things so that the product in its current state can support all these different ways of reading.
Wow, that's really fascinating, Winston. I got to imagine that that's really satisfying to see all those people who have been helped by your app over the years. I want to thank you for joining us today, and congratulations again. This is a well-deserved award, and I'd encourage listeners to go check out Voice Dream Reader on the App Store if you haven't run across it before. Thanks for joining us today, Winston.
Thank you so much for inviting me. It's quite an honor.
We're here today with the team behind Pok Pok Playroom, one of the Apple Design Award-winning apps of 2021. Pok Pok Playroom, which won an ADA in the Delight and Fun category, is an open-ended set of playrooms for kids designed to spark their imaginations through exploration. Welcome to AppStories, everyone.
Thank you.
And congratulations on the award. It's a big achievement, and boy, I mean, what a couple of months you all have had with the release just in May of the app, and an ADA not even like 4 weeks later. I don't think that's pretty amazing. Before we get started with the questions, if everyone could introduce themselves briefly, just let us know what your name is and what your role is at Pok Pok, so that the listeners know who's who.
Cool. I'm Esther, and I'm the creative director at Pok Pok.
I'm Mathijs, and I'm the design director at Pok Pok.
And I'm Melissa, and I'm the CEO at Pok Pok.
Awesome. Thank you. So I just want to dive right in. Could you tell us a little more about the origin story of Pok Pok Playroom, what the app is all about, how it came to be, how you got started with this idea?
Of course. Mathijs is my husband, and we have 2 kids together. And when our oldest was about to turn 2, we wanted to have him have his own screen time, because he was already watching a bit of TV, but he saw us on our devices all the time. And we went looking for an app for him that was like kind of educational and was not overstimulating, wasn't too addictive to him, and something that he could navigate independently, because he wasn't even 2 years old, so he couldn't read, he couldn't do all the complicated gestures, he didn't understand any menus or like home buttons and back buttons and all that kind of fun grown-up stuff. And at the same time, we were working at different companies and in different projects. So we wanted like a kind of small hobby project for the 2 of us. So we decided to make a digitally animated storybook that was like fully 2D animated. So like in the original old school flip book style, so to speak. And it was supposed to be a look and search book where every single object would be able to be tapped, and it would animate and move and make a sound. And that would give Mathijs like a chance to try out Game Maker, and it would give me a chance to hone my animation skills, because we are both classically trained animators. And it kind of went from there. It was a small hobby project. We the most janky version ever, still managed to really entertain our 2-year-old. And then Mathijs showed the prototype at the GDC to Ryan and Jordan from Snowman, and the ball kind of got rolling from there.
Oh, wow. Well, I have to imagine that winning an ADA for Delight and Fun has to be very validating for you, given what the app is all about. And I'm wondering what, in the process of putting the app together and launching it, what the reaction has been from both kids and families to the app and who have tried it.
It's been really exciting, I have to say. I think that from day one, we started play testing as soon as Mathijs and Esther had the first very janky build a couple of years ago. So we were used to getting a lot of feedback from kids and their families. But since we've launched, of course, that feedback has just blossomed and grown, and we've been able to collect a lot more diverse feedback from many different countries. And it's just been incredible. I think this is really the reason why we do what we do, is to hear kids say things like, that was really fun, or hear stories from parents that share, these little moments at home where their child has learned something, or Pok Pok Playroom might have sparked an idea that they could explore outside of the app itself. And that's what it's all about for us. So we've just been completely overwhelmed. And every time we get a feedback, whether that's an App Store review or an email or a tweet, we share it with our team and everybody talks about it. And it really fuels us. So yeah, it's just been incredible.
Oh, that's great. I was wondering, I first saw the app, I guess, in 2019 at the last in-person WWDC, where I saw I think was a pretty early prototype, but it was already looking really polished. I mean, not all the Playroom toys were there yet, but there were some really interesting ideas already built into the app. Can you tell us a little bit more about the process the app went through during its development, from kind of those early stages or even earlier when you showed it off at GDC to what we see on the App Store today?
Our starting point, we have a couple of pillars where we really want to work around, and that it has to be open-ended. There can't be any right or wrong answers within any of our toys, because just like a set of wooden blocks in an actual playroom wouldn't also give that feedback of you build a correct tower, or this is wrong or this is right. So we wanted the same kind of feedback or no feedback at all, so to speak, within each toy. It has to be grounded in reality somehow, most of the time. So there are no sparkling unicorns and fairy dust and all that kind of stuff. We felt that we wanted to mimic a real playroom as much as we could for all of those instances where, of course, kids need to play with real toys all the time, and we would never say that Pok Pok replaces any of the toys that they have in their playroom. But for those instances where you need for a second, a small break, or just hand your child a device to keep them calm or occupied for a little while, then we figured we would build something that would kind of mimic the same thinking process and feel of a real playroom.
Yeah, and on top of that, if Pok Pok is looked at like a real toy, it should resemble the educational, almost, we call it wooden toys, because it feels like a wooden toy almost, and not something plasticky. It's strange to say that about a digital thing, but it has to feel wooden or something like that. But it is some part of our design.
Yeah, there was definitely a lot of thought in how we almost wanted to feel physical, even though it was on a device. That's why a big part of that is our sound design, and our sound designer Matt hand recorded every single sound, and it's all there's not a lot of synthesized sounds, all him tapping an apple with a chopstick or rattling a soup can with a fork or something. It's all very handmade. Real and very handmade, and he has the most fun studio where he just has all these things collected where he can just record everything by hand, and it really adds to that feeling of a real physical toy, even though it's on a device.
So one of the things that makes Pok Pok Playroom special is really the fact that it's so accessible to a wide range of ages, right? To a wide range of users, including very young kids. And I think part of the reason why that's possible is because there's hardly any UI or text. It's not like there's a manual that requires complex reading skills. And so I have to wonder, what is it like to design this kind of product where you have to sort of guide a very young user toward understanding the experience of the game without necessarily having to explain it via text or other complex guides within the game itself, which is sort of what happens all the time with all kinds of video games, right?
Yeah, it's actually a really fun and special process in that there are so many things that tie together. It's the fact that we have to take into account that half or most of our audience can't read or is learning how to read, but usually they do not have that ability just yet. At the same time, they also usually do not know all of these user interface items like a back button or a home button yet, because that's also a learned process. So we had to make sure that because they can't do that, we had to make sure that nothing can go wrong and they can't do anything wrong. And that's the beauty of open-ended play, because there are no right and wrong answers. Whatever they do, it always works out. They can't break the toy. And as for the minimal UI that we have, we wanted to kind of invoke that feeling of just like entering a playroom, picking a toy off the shelf, playing with it, then putting it back and picking something else.
We don't want the kids to get stuck in a hierarchy, and we saw that in a lot of other apps. Like there's a menu and there's a hierarchy, and you go down these levels, and the kids can't get back or can't go forward. So that's our philosophy. Like early on, we even talked about having nothing like a menu, even like no button at all. But we did end up by having what we call our puck, which is the round circular icon we have that gets you back and forth. But that's the only thing we have. So we managed to keep it at like one level.
But even there, we made sure that all of our going from the playroom menu to a toy and back was always a very slow process, and we always made sure that we showed kind of to like the white background shrinking around the puck when you enter a toy. Like we visually lead the eye to like, hey, this is where all of the other activities went, and you can simply go like press here and it'll take you back. And us adults are so used to like a super quick blink of an eye interface, and we always want everything to be super fast, but toddlers' brains don't work that way, and they need kind of like an explanation as to like where it went. So we made sure that like for us adults it feels kind of like a slow transition, but for toddlers it's actually just right, because they visually saw where everything went, and it's not like a confusing blink of an eye switch.
That's really interesting. I also wonder, with WWDC just having wrapped up a few days ago, are you looking at any particular iOS or iPadOS 15 technologies? I don't know. I'm thinking of SharePlay, for example, things along those lines. Are you looking at any new technologies for Pok Pok Playroom in particular?
I think for us, we're so inspired by Apple's technology, and we were so excited watching that keynote this last week. And I think that right now we don't have any very concrete plans to share, but we're very much keeping an eye on things. And I think with Pok Pok, even fundamentally as a new company, our goal is to really help raise the next generation of creative thinkers. And in order to do that well, we need to be using the newest technology. And we also need to understand as a team that the sky is the limit. And that's very easy to say, but it's quite hard to actually practice, because as adults, we tend to see the limits on things, and we often say no before we say yes. And spending a lot of time with kids these past few years has given us that almost like zest for curiosity. And so when we see something like SharePlay, of course, our minds explode with ideas. And so we're really excited to see how we're able to evolve the playroom, not only on the end of toys and expansions, which we're already very hard at work on, but also with these really cool technologies and abilities that Apple's presenting.
Yeah, I can imagine. Let me ask you about the tools in the app for adults to help guide kids in using it, because I know that you can access those from the main screen. I thought it was really clever how you require someone to input the current time in order to unlock the adult functionality. But could you explain a little bit about what's going on there, and what kind of tools are there for parents and teachers and that sort of thing?
Sure. So we wanted the grown-ups area to be very simple. The last thing a parent has extra of, it's time. So we wanted to make that really straightforward. And in the grown-ups area, there are a couple of really cool features. My favorite one are the drawings saved. And it sounds so simple, but I think as a parent, your kids grow up so quickly. There are probably a million drawings and paintings and ripped up pieces of paper all around your house. And if they draw something on your phone or on your iPad, like, you'd love to keep that. And so we automatically save everything that your child creates in the drawing toy. And we don't automatically save that to your iCloud. So you don't end up with, 10,000 squiggly lines. But we do make sure that it's always accessible and you can share it with friends or family or print it. And we think that's really cool. Another tool which we've been working really hard on are what we're calling our learning prompts or our play prompts. And those are just really quick one-liners that we've worked really hard to craft with some of our educational advisors, who are made up of teachers and occupational therapists, professors, just tons of different people who are experts in early childhood learning. And they're just quick one-liners like, what made you think that, or what are you exploring, or they're often very open-ended questions that just encourage deeper play for parents or teachers who have the time and are interested in sitting down with their little one and playing Pok Pok together. And alternatively, what's super cool is, like, you can really remember them. They're just a few words long, and then you can use them over and over in different scenarios. It doesn't have to just be in the playroom. It can be outside while they're exploring bugs in the forest, or it can be, while they're eating and smashing, their cutlery on the table and making a big mess. And I think they're really just there to encourage parents to connect with their kids on a deeper level and encourage the kids to really think deeply about what they're doing. So those are really, like, two of our favorite features there.
Yeah, I thought those were really, really interesting prompts, because I think that sometimes I think it really helps to give kids a little extra push and encouragement sometimes, and to explain how they're exploring things. But I want to thank all three of you for joining us today. It's been a real pleasure talking to you. I really appreciate everybody taking the time out of their day to talk to us, and also congratulations again. We reviewed Pok Pok Playroom on MacStories, and I had a lot of fun playing with it myself. It's very, very nice, relaxing thing to do, to push the buttons and move the cars around in the streets and things like that. I really enjoyed it myself, and I look forward to seeing what everybody comes up with in the future with the app. This special Apple Design Award interview episode of AppStories kicks off our Apple OS Summer Preview Series, a collection of in-depth stories on MacStories and interview episodes on AppStories. And like last year, this year's series is brought to you by none other than Concepts, the infinite canvas app for the iPad. Sketch, note, and explore endless ideas with Concepts. Draw in designer Copic colors with liquid pens and brushes, and organize images, texts, and sketches into visual mood boards. Used by creative professionals for visual thinking, note-taking, team communication, storyboarding, product design, and architectural planning, Concepts lets you sketch and share your ideas in the moment. Everything you draw in Concepts is a flexible, editable vector. Nudge, edit, and reorganize your ideas with natural finger gestures. Drag and drop images and objects onto the canvas for fast ideation and reference. Use layers and grid layouts to organize your work, mark up PDF documents, and apply real-world scale for professional design projects. Export and share standard high-res and vector file types for flexible work between teams and apps. Concepts' built-in presentation mode lets you connect with others for live sharing and graphics-based discussions. Whiteboard virtually with teams and clients using apps like Zoom, then instantly share your discussion. The app comes free with a basic sketching tool with the ability to unlock 200-plus libraries of brushes, objects, and services via a subscription or one-time purchase. To learn more about Concepts, visit their website today at concepts.app. Then download it and give it a try. Again, that URL is concepts.app to learn more and download this amazing tool that'll unleash your creativity. Our thanks to Concepts for their support of the show and our entire summer series. We are here with Brian Mueller, the maker of Carrot Weather and a winner of an Apple Design Award this year. Hi, Brian. Welcome to the show.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me.
Congratulations on the ADA. That is just amazing. I mean, we've at MacStories, we followed Carrot Weather for a very long time, and it was kind of fun getting ready to talk to you going back and looking at all the versions of the app and how it's evolved over time through screenshots on MacStories. And then I looked to see, because I knew we had talked to you a long time ago on AppStories, and it turns out we talked to you in 2017, not long after the show started, in episode 6. So I guess a lot's happened in the last 4 years, both for Carrot Weather and for us. But it's great to talk to you. I guess I want to get started by asking you, we talked in 2017. Where has Carrot Weather been kind of in that time over the last 4 years or so?
Sure. I mean, I think in 2017, the reason that I came on that was that I was just launching what would have then been version 4.0, a relatively major redesign of the app. And I think at the time, what I was doing was really bringing a lot of more professional features into the app. The first version of Carrot Weather was basically purely entertainment focused. And as time went on, users were asking for me to add like little features here and there. The app slowly started gaining more and more professional features to the point where like the Apple Watch app was one of the best weather apps available on the Apple Watch. And so I really wanted to start carrying some of that stuff over that I'd learned from building a really nice weather app for the Apple Watch back over to the iPhone app and make it really nice on there. And I think what has happened in the last 4 years since then is just I kept iterating on that and adding lots of other really cool features like notifications and widgets and a bunch of other cool stuff like that, but just kept focusing on making the app really great for the people who like it for the entertainment purpose and also for the professional purpose. There's a lot of overlap between the two, but those are like my two main audiences. And that is really what I wanted to do with the redesign of Carrot Weather that launched earlier this year as well, is just make it really great for everybody as much as possible.
So, Brian, you won the Apple Design Award in the interaction category. And so I wanted to ask you, what is it like to sort of, how do you strike the balance of, between designing something that's supposed to have your taste, your opinion, your craft, but also something that should be highly customizable for users? Sort of, how do you approach that, that task of, I want to create something that I like, something that I know how to build, but also something that could be modified by other people?
Yeah, it's really interesting. The whole reason that I built the big customizability feature with all the different layouts, I felt like it was my holy grail. Like, I always thought that weather apps, like, you can't just have one weather app and it is perfect for everybody, because people in rainy climates like Florida or Seattle or England care about completely different stuff than people in really sunny areas like California or Dubai or that kind of thing. And so people really want to have different weather experiences. They care about completely different things. And that's the main reason that I wanted to build this customizability feature, because people care about not just different data points, but also different layouts. For example, like during the winter, I care a lot more about what the forecast is going to be like for the rest of the week than I care about what the forecast is going to be like for the next 24 hours. So during the winter, I make the daily forecast much more prominent in my interface than the hourly forecast. And so just stuff like that was really interesting to me. In terms of like my actual design process, it's more like I just build the stuff that I want to have personally in the app. And like, I think about what other people want to have, but I want to make it good for me, and that because I use the app so much, and everything else is sort of in the back of my head and I'm trying to think about that, but I'm building stuff that I think would be cool and that I would be really excited about if I was just downloading this app off of the App Store and I'd never seen it before.
Yeah, that's really interesting because I don't think that everybody necessarily thinks about the fact that weather really is such a personal thing. I mean, you don't have any control over it, but but what you care about is very personal. What sort of challenges did you face in designing such a customizable interface, Brian?
Oh man, it was very challenging. I mean, it's just a lot of work building. It's like building 100 different weather apps all at once instead of just building one, because not only do you have to have, it has to have a lot of customization for it to be worth having all these customization options. So if you only have like one or two different options, it just doesn't feel worth it to put it out there. And so like each section has at least 4 different layout options. And so building all of those is challenging. And then the other part of it that's challenging is making it all look good together. So it's not like MySpace from 2006 where like it's just hideous. It's really easy to make something hideous, and it's really hard to make something that looks nice. And so that was the other big challenge, was making it look consistent and giving people the tools to make the different components look nice no matter where you put like the hourly forecast and the daily forecast and the little cards. And so like one of the things I did with that was making it possible to adjust the spacing in between sections, because some look better with a little bit more padding and some look better with a little bit tighter padding. And so just figuring all this stuff out was a challenge, because there aren't a lot of, or I'm not even really aware of any other apps that are customizable to, the layouts are customizable to this degree. And so it's not like I had other stuff to jump off of and like copy off of. And so a lot of it was just me just experimenting with a bunch of different things and seeing what worked, and then doing something sort of like half-assed for a couple weeks, and then coming back to it and realizing that it was terrible, and then having to go back and completely redo it during the alpha period. And so it was challenging, but it was a lot of fun. I like doing stuff that are new problems that no one has really solved before, like doing stuff on the Apple Watch back when that launched, or doing this.
Right.
Or another good example is the augmented reality thing that I added a couple of years ago in Carrot.
It reminds me a little bit of something like Super Mario Maker, because in a way you've designed not just a weather app, but an editing system, building blocks for creating an app, a weather app that puts it in the hands of the user, which is really kind of neat, I think.
Yeah, I mean, that was actually one of my inspirations for the whole layout system, when I went to think about like how should because originally my intention was to just put it out in a way that was similar to the much less deep customization features that I had in 4.0, which was basically all you could do was add different data points. Like you could add wind speed instead of precipitation chance on the hourly forecast graph, for example. And so that was much more narrow. But what I was originally going to do was just have a list of the different sections, and you'd tap into them and make the changes there. But then as I got closer to release and I had added so many different customization options, I realized it would take people like at least 20 to 30 minutes to change from one layout to another. And so that's when the whole like layout system was born, where you could save different layouts and quickly swap between them. And I added like a couple, I think there's like 6 pre-built layouts that you can switch between, just to sort of show you what's possible to build in the app. So I'm really glad I spent the time and energy into adding those things, because otherwise it would be really overwhelming for a new user to just come in and see this like wall of options for each section in the app and have no idea how to customize it without getting completely and totally overwhelmed.
Brian, do you feel like you can more freely spend time on really refining these features and sort of designing the weather app that you want to use because of the subscription model that you have? Sort of you have the stability to do that now, as opposed to, say, a few years ago when maybe you didn't have that kind of recurring revenue source.
Yeah, I think that it has definitely helped. just to give some background, the entire reason that I added a subscription in the first place was when the Apple Watch added complication support. I think that was in watchOS 2 at the end of the first year that the watch was available. And so that started, in order to do complications, I had to offer background updates to keep the complications up to date. Or for each weather update, you have to pay a fraction of a cent. And so the amount of updates that the Apple Watch would use, the complications would use, was like 50 times what a typical iPhone user would use. And so I basically had to add a subscription. Otherwise, like a little after a year after buying the app, then users would end up costing me more than what they paid for the app. And that was the whole genesis of the subscription model in Carrot. And so what I've been doing over the years is just adding more and more professional features for subscribers to make them, I guess, feel like it was worth it. So that's been one of the big drives for adding all the professional features that are in the app, is just keeping those people happy and making them feel like the subscription is worth it. But yeah, so what it has done for me has back when it was just the pay up front model, I was very dependent on doing big splashy updates that would get the attention of different outlets, Apple outlets like you guys and more mainstream tech press sites. And you'd see a big spike in downloads around those updates, but then it would slowly tail off. And it was exhausting having to come up with these really big updates, and they'd be spaced out so that there would be enough features in each update to get people's attention. And now with this new model, I can release updates much more frequently, and so people get to get their hands on new stuff much more frequently. It's more monthly now as opposed to like every 4 months or whatever it was before. And it just gives me a lot more opportunity to add these really cool features that cost more money than would be remotely possible if I was just charging up front for the app.
Yeah, I can imagine. So, Brian, we are recording this on the final day of WWDC, and I was wondering if there are any particular APIs and other features that you've seen this year that you're looking forward to playing with Carrot Weather.
There were tons of really cool features that were announced this week, and lots of little things like, well, I wouldn't say it's little, but like StoreKit 2 is amazing. It'll make it so that a lot less work dealing with in-app purchases and subscriptions. That was really cool. But the big cool feature that Apple seems to be focused on this year is the whole thing with the sharing experiences in FaceTime. And I'm really excited to sort of dig in and figure out, like, what could I do that's really fun and exciting in Carrot that people would want to do, that people would want to share with others while they're on a FaceTime call together. And I think there's a couple of cool things that I could do with that would be really fun and interesting, and also not the kind of thing that other weather apps can do because they don't have this whole like personality and mini games and stuff like that built into it. So it's always cool to find uses for Apple's technologies in ways that other weather apps can't.
Wow, I can't wait to see what you do with that. Brian, thanks so much for spending some time with us today. I know it's been a crazy week. Congratulations again on the ADA. It's a great honor, I think, and I think well deserved, because Carrot Weather's been kind of a pillar of the indie app community for a long time. It's one of our favorite apps at MacStories, and it's been fantastic to talk to you.
Yeah, thank you so much. You guys have been a huge inspiration, both before I even became a developer and just the entire time that I've been building Carrot, and just to focusing on the apps that you guys do has pushed me to become a better developer, and also just the feedback from users, your users, people on Reddit, it has just pushed Carrot to become so much better than the app that I built in a month and got up on the App Store just to see how people would react to a snarky weather app. And so I really appreciate everything that you guys have done and all of your listeners have done to make Carrot successful.
Well, thanks a lot, Brian.
Oh, thank you, Brian.
We're here with the ustwo Games team behind Alba, a wildlife adventure, one of the Apple Design Award-winning games for 2021. Alba is a story of a girl on a mission to protect the wildlife of a small island, cleaning it up and getting residents to sign a petition to stop the construction of a hotel that threatens the local wildlife preserve. Before we get into the questions, if everyone could introduce themselves and their roles at ustwo, that would be helpful to listeners.
Sure, I can kick it off. I'm Maria Sayans, and I am CEO at ustwo Games.
Hello, I'm David Fernandez Huerta. I'm the studio art director at ustwo Games, and I was the creative director of Alba, a wildlife adventure.
Oh, terrific. Welcome to the show. Federico, you want to start off the questions?
Absolutely. So first of all, congratulations, everyone. It's really amazing to see this kind of game winning an Apple Design Award. Could you tell us a little more about the origin story of Alba, sort of how the game came together? What was the initial idea and sort of how that became Alba over time?
Yeah, I had been thinking about making a game about, the original idea was taking pictures of animals because it's something I do in real life for fun, and people will see me and say like, hey, when are you gonna do a bird watching game? And so this has been something that I've been thinking about for a few years. Never seemed to be quite the right time for it, and we were prototyping right after making Money Valley 2, prototyping all sorts of ideas, and eventually we kind of like came to this one. I was working with Kirsty Kitch, who's one of our programmers and designers, and we started talking about photography and the idea of running around the world, and we started talking about what can this world be, and we both. So I'm from Spain, and she grew up in Spain. She's from Scotland, but we had like very similar upbringings in that sense of the kind of nature that we're used to and the kind of landscapes and the customs, almost like is not just the light, but it's also the kind of people, the kind of buildings, the kind of landscape that you see in a Mediterranean location in Spain. So we kind of like started building that, and people in the studio, I think, perceived that as something that they hadn't seen before in a game. At first we were like, I don't know, like is this too niche? But I do believe in making things concrete enough so they are relatable, not just because they're generic, but because they come across as truthful. So yeah, this combination of bird watching and photography and creating this realistic, in the sense of like believable world, is kind of like what started the project, really.
It's really interesting. Let me ask about the specific ADA that you won, which was for social impact. Could you tell us a little bit about ustwo's efforts to plant trees and some of the other aspects of this that, wildlife conservation and reducing the company's carbon footprint that went into the creation of the game?
I can answer a little bit like from kind of the things that we're doing outside of the game, perhaps.
Sure.
I think that as we were developing the game, the themes of conservation became more and more important, and it became more and more clear that was something that we really wanted to lean into, And on the back of that, we thought, well, if we do this, it would feel a little bit self-serving not to actually take it further. How do we? We became a B Corp last year, and B Corps, in theory, are trying to, in theory and in practice, we're trying to hold ourselves accountable to like higher standards of social impact and environmental impact. And I think that really inspired us to think, how does a B Corp make a game about the environment? How do we take it further? How do we have an impact in the real world? And so we got out and decided to, first of all, let's make sure that what we put in the game is science-backed, and it's supported by the experts. And we engaged with a few experts in that space. Thanks a lot to the United Nations. As a part of teams within the United Nations, and specifically UN Live, helped put us in contact with experts that had a play of the game and kind of assessed it and gave us some really useful feedback during development. But then we also thought, how do we actually have impact on the real world? And we considered a number of things, but one of them, and I think the one that got the most energy behind it, was the idea of planting one tree for every copy of the game sold. We had already started working with a company called Ecology, just on our carbon footprint, kind of carbon footprint reduction and measuring, and they also have a part of the company that's focused on helping people like plant trees and collaborate with reforestation projects. And so it was very natural that we would go with them, and so we ended up putting up this kind of plan together, where for every copy of the game sold or downloaded, we plant a tree. And we are, I think we've reached about 650,000 trees that we've supported or that we've helped plant, and our goal is to reach 1 million. So we're kind of well on our way there. And then the final piece is, we tried to go a little bit deeper beyond doing a tree for every copy. Is what if we could mobilize our fans to actually change the way that they behave? And we partnered with an organization called Count Us In to actually set up a bit of a community for our players, where for everything they changed in their real life, like, it would get measured, and they would be able to track the impact of what they did in terms of their carbon reduction and their carbon footprint. That part has been a little bit less successful. I think we were asking a little bit too much of our fans, but I think we're going to keep working on that and maybe find ways to engage with other people. I mean, so far the trees has probably been the most successful. That, and just the impact that we're having on players as they play the game.
That's awesome. That's really, really powerful for, like, not the kind of stuff that you usually see in a video game on the App Store. And speaking of games on the App Store, I think it's fair to say that a lot of Apple users maybe tend to associate the name ustwo with Monument Valley, both the first one and the sequel. And so I wanted to ask you, what were some of the challenges in going from Monument Valley to designing something like Alba, which is a different kind of game with a different kind of impact and a different kind of story?
Yeah, it is very different, but it shares a lot of the philosophy behind the original Monument Valley games as well. And I mean, I'm not gonna lie, it was very, very challenging development, because, as you say, like, we're making new stuff. We're trying things that we haven't tried before. As an open world game, which on a mobile platform is very difficult to achieve. Also with the attention span of a mobile player, which is a bit shorter than a console player, so we designed the world and the activities with that in mind. But the philosophy of Monument Valley remains in Alba, is the way of making things of us two games, of having this like low friction experience where everything is about the joy of play and enjoying the world and having surprises around every corner, solving problems creatively is a big part of Monument Valley, and it's a big part of Alba as well. presenting the experience in an elegant way, not doing, not taking you by the hand too much, but also not letting you just abandon you in the middle of the game, finding that balance of support and experimentation for the player, and really like all these values that come from us coming from a UX design studio like the main ustwo company. A big part of it is like it really is that DNA coming from back in our parent company and kind of like permeating everything we do. And I think there's lots of similarities in that regard. And the challenges were more this team is the biggest team we've ever had in a game, or we haven't done this kind of game before. But the philosophy really is so integral to all of us when we're working on these games that is really like we just do it without thinking too much. Like, this is how we do games.
Right. I can totally see that. There's at its heart, it has a lot of the thought behind Monument Valley embedded in the game. And, I've played Alba, and I really love the colors and the incredible sound design and the incredibly positive message throughout the game. I think that's a great thing to see in a game on the App Store. And I wanted to get a sense for what's the feedback been like from players of the game? How has it affected them?
It's the best that I could have hoped. Especially seeing people play online. Like you never know. Like we work on this for like over 2.5 years, and we didn't know what people were gonna say. As like, is this too? I don't know. Is it perceived as a children's game too much and adults don't play it? Or like, those kind of self-doubts. But we started seeing people playing online and everyone reacted kind of in the exact way that we hoped they would. And getting like engrossed in the experience and looking for the different animals and reacting to the characters and the plot in the right way. So, and I'm super happy how it has been received. And you get the occasional message on Twitter, my child was playing Alba and now he wants to pick up trash in the real world. And it's like, oh.
That's awesome. That's exactly like the kind of story that I hope we were able to talk about here on the show, because this is that kind of game, right? That, just because it's on the App Store and it can be, it can tell this kind of story to millions of people globally. But it's not just on the App Store, it's on Apple Arcade. And so I wanted to ask you sort of what kind of different, what kind of role did Apple Arcade play in the Alba story? Because previously, like originally when Monument Valley, the first one came out years ago, it was a traditional App Store release. And this is an Apple Arcade release instead. Have you noticed something different about sort of the way that you approached this, or the feedback that you got from customers later? Was it different releasing on Apple Arcade compared to the App Store years ago?
I think that the partnership with Apple has been really, really strong from the very beginning, and I think that one of the things that one of the things that's been really helpful is some of the feedback on who that Apple was sharing with us about who that audience is. There's a strong focus on families, right, for example. Right. And that's an inspiration that we always have when we think about like adults playing with a young person in their life, whether it's a father and a child, a parent and a child, or different generations in a household, like bringing people together and sharing that experience. So knowing that was important for Apple and Arcade, and that really kind of married with some of the values that we had. I think that's also been interesting, that it's helped us push ourselves outside of just pure mobile development, because we needed to make the game for macOS and tvOS as well. And so that's really helped like do something that we hadn't done before, and just bring the game to other platforms, and really embrace, for example, landscape gameplay. David, is there anything else that you want to say on this?
Yeah, I think what you said is really true, and also having this regular catch-ups with the producers over at Apple and having that feedback and at the right time to be able to navigate the development. And in terms of release, it's been very different. It's a completely different ecosystem, and but still people react very well. Like, you don't have the same kind of metrics, but still you see that there's a community out there, and that people really care.
Thank you. That's great. It's interesting to see the impact that Apple Arcade has had on gaming on Apple's platforms, and I think it's been a really positive one. And it's also terrific just to see Alba win the ADA, because this, to me, it's a real heartwarming story baked into the game, and it's great. Great to see that kind of game be honored in this way. I want to congratulate you both again for the ADA, and thanks for taking the time to speak with us today.
Oh, thank you.
All right, Federico, that was a lot of fun. I really enjoyed those interviews. It was a lot of fun talking to all those winners. I wish we could talk to all 12, but we would have been on Skype for days on end, I think, if we had done that.
But also it would have been like a 3-hour episode, so I'm not sure.
That too.
But I think we had a nice combination of different kinds of apps and games that won an Apple Design Award, each with its own unique backstory. And this is really what I find so fascinating about winners of the Apple Design Award, sort of seeing the unique human aspect behind each winner and the story and sort of how the product came to be. So hopefully that came through from the interviews that we've done.
I had a lot of fun talking to these folks, and I think it's always those backstories and where the inspiration came from, the spark of an idea, and how they overcame various obstacles to actually get the app out there and in the hands of users is always fascinating to me. And I think there's a really neat variety of different apps and games and stories here. All right, Federico, I want to thank our sponsor again for this episode and for our entire summer series, and that is Concepts, the Infinite Canvas app for iPad. You can find me and Federico over at macstories.net. Federico is at Fetici on Twitter and Instagram. That's VITICCI. And I'm at John Voorhees. JOHN VOORHWS. Talk to you next week, Federico.
Ciao, John.